These are the first group of white South Africans who've been fast-tracked into refugee status. The Trump administration made a big thing about cracking down on immigration and suspending the refugee resettlement program. So questions are being asked on why has such an exception been made for this group of people?
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, we are going to be talking about President Trump sending a chartered plane all the way to South Africa to get his white Afrikaans here.
Right, and meanwhile, the white South African refugees have already gotten to America. But in today's video, we're going to be looking at both white and black Americans' reaction when they found out that Trump had chartered a plane to South Africa to rescue his refugees.
Right. The question I'm going to ask in this episode today is, and I'd like to hear from you guys, what do you think about all this, and what do you think about President Trump giving priority to only white South Africans? Because I do understand that he already made some decisions to deport immigrants because he cited that he didn't want the economic impact that immigrants have on America. So why is it that white South Africans are special?
Utterly important for white South African refugees to get to America
to a point where they're being brought for a plane to bring them back, right?
Right. So as you ponder upon these questions, you can also leave us a comment on the comment section on what you think about this episode, and also consider subscribing if you are new to our channel.
Right.
And let's watch this video and then you come back and talk about it.
These are the first group of white South Africans who've been fast-tracked into refugee status. The Trump administration made a big thing about cracking down on immigration and suspending the refugee resettlement program. So questions are being asked on why has such an exception been made for this group of people?
White farmers are being brutally killed and their land is being confiscated in South Africa.
Billionaire Elon Musk grew up in apartheid South Africa. He's one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, and he claims that there is a genocide of white people happening. South Africa's foreign minister says that there has been no land confiscation, and Donald Trump's claims that murders are happening in large numbers is not backed by any police data.
So it looks like the Afrikaners will arrive from South Africa next week. Now, there are already Afrikaners who live in the United States of America. And everyone wants to know, what are they running from? They're running from black folks. The white flight is a thing here in the United States of America where when there are too many black folks around, the white folks up and move, right? Well, this is an international phenomenon. Not quite sure why they do that though, because they come to where other people are and then they want to shuffle. White people do this thing, and this is a cultural thing. This is a real tradition, okay, obviously, because they like to move people around. Now there's white flight because the thing they're running from is black folks.
I know every time you see my face, you're like, girl, what you got now? Sit down. I've got more news and information that you can use. The Trump administration is planning to soon receive the first group of white South African refugees it says deserve a safe haven in the U.S. because of alleged racial discrimination in post-apartheid South Africa. Government documents obtained by CBS News are actually showing the initial arrival of the South African refugees could happen as early as next week, according to the documents, which describe the effort as a, quote, stated priority for the Trump administration. Officials have planned a Monday press event at Dulles International Airport in Virginia to welcome the group, the documents show. Although sources familiar with the effort told CBS News the timing of the plan could actually change. So in February, some of you all must remember, President Trump issued an executive order directing officials to use the U.S. refugee program to resettle AFRIKAANers, an ethnic group in South Africa made up of descendants of European colonists, mostly from the Netherlands. The president claimed that Afrikaners faced government-sponsored race-based discrimination, citing a law that U.S. conservatives like South African-born Elon Musk have said allow racially motivated seizures of land owned by white South Africans. South Africa's government has strongly denied any land confiscations or racially motivated discrimination. The hastily arranged initiative to welcome Afrikaners stands in stark contrast to the Trump administration's move to ban most other refugees from entering the U.S. One of Trump's first actions after returning to the White House was suspending the American Refugee Admissions Program, stranding thousands of approved refugees who had been identified as vulnerable individuals fleeing violence and persecution in Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world.
To all of the South African Afrikaans refugees that are coming to America soon, I just want to let you know, as someone whose wife is Afrikaans, who's been to South Africa multiple times, you're going to have a bad time. There's no white genocide happening in South Africa. You have crime that's happening as a result of racism-fueled generational economic inequality, the same thing that's happening in America. We're just a couple decades ahead of you on the unchecked capitalism timeline. But I have good news for you. You don't have to worry about the cheap exploited labor rising up against you anymore, because now that you're in America, you'll get to be the cheap exploited labor. If you were middle class or upper middle class in South Africa and you come to America, you're poor now. Like, really poor. You're not going to have maids and gardeners and personal servants that you can pay $15 a day for. Now you get to be the cheap labor. But by all means, please come to America and experience the American capitalism that Elon Musk's been raving about to you. You'll probably love it. You know, what do I know? There's probably very little chance that you'll end up going back to South Africa in a year or two after realizing how overpriced and fucked up America is. I wouldn't even worry about that as a possibility. And if you think I'm being mean to these people because I think they're a bunch of racist, bigoted colonizers who wish they could go back to apartheid South Africa, it's just because I do think that. But to them, I say, welcome to the American dream. Please let me know when you've woken up from it.
I hope y'all ready for what this means. If you think the racism in this country is out of control, wait till you see what the white South Africans are gonna bring to this country. President Trump signed an executive order in February granting an exception for white South Africans to be coming here as refugees. Now, nothing's wrong with their country. They're not seeking asylum. They're not being mistreated in South Africa. They are told that they are going to treat everybody equally, and they don't want that because remember, they colonized South Africa. And now they're gonna be in your neighborhoods. Here they come, taking over your neighborhoods. They have refugee status. They're gonna seek asylum here. They're gonna get all kinds of social benefits. But that's okay as long as they're not Venezuelan. That's okay as long as they're not Mexican. It's okay as long as they're not from Cuba. But since they're white, bring them on over.
Bro, what you mean they about to have 8,000 white South Afrikaner refugees coming over here? Y'all serious? Bro, you are already the majority. Like, how much help do you need? You like that person that claims to be the star player, but literally everybody else does all the work. If you go out on a weekend, like, the place is already filled with a bunch of dudes who want to look like Morgan Wallen. And a bunch of girls who probably dyed their hair blonde because they aren't a natural one. And you're telling me there's going to be more of that?
These people are descendants of the colonialists from the Netherlands. They came into South Africa in 1948 and before that, really. And stole all of the land. So they make up like 13% of the population in South Africa, and they own like 95% of the land. Like literally one person will have 20 or 25,000 acres that they and their lineage stole. And they are colonialist minded to this day. They are slave mentality, like slave owning mentality. They are, they exist in South Africa and black people are not allowed where they live unless they have a permit for work, like a housemaid or something. And they're the cause for South Africa being one of the most unequal countries in the world, according to the World Bank, to this day. And while apartheid ended in 1990, you wouldn't know it going to South Africa by the way that the black people, the black South Africans, are treated versus these jackasses. And that is what they are. They are fucking ignorant, evil people. I mean,
Trump administration is set to fly in tens of thousands of South African white people to the United States as refugees next week. And yet Kilmar Abrego Garcia sits in an El Salvadorian prison for what? For what? Things that you couldn't prove. If you don't remember, back in January 20th, Trump signed an executive order basically stating, we don't want to bring in any more refugees. We're not bringing in any more refugees. Although we know that executive orders don't hold legal weight and it's more than a statement. This is definitely contradicting, isn't it? Well, it's not, because he's a racist. A racist goes against his own actual public statement saying that we can't accept more refugees, but constantly tries to kick out any brown person or any non-white person in this country because of their refugee status, even if they're here legally or not. Now, we know Elon Musk is from South Africa, of course, but he added to this conversation in saying that Africa has not done well at stopping racism and overall violence towards white farmers in Africa. I wonder why. It couldn't be because of the apartheid. Huh? It couldn't be because you made them slaves. This is just another I am outside and I am a racist agenda from Donald Trump, and he proves it in real time. He does not care what he contradicts.
They only want white people here. Because when we think about refugees who need immediate resettlement, expedited screenings, we usually think about people who are fleeing extreme violence, persecution, famine, war in places like South Sudan, Myanmar, the Congo, not white Afrikaners. See that chartered plane the Trump administration is sending? It's not going to collect refugees that have been sitting in resettlement camps for years, fully vetted, waiting to come to the United States to escape violence. No, it's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. Why would they be getting discriminated against? Probably because they spent generations instituting legalized forms of racial segregation and discrimination called apartheid, aka Stephen Miller's wet dream. See, while the rest of the world after World War II saw that maybe racial discrimination not such a hot idea and favored more policies of integration and away from colonization, Afrikaners doubled down on that shit and instituted apartheid. Although it ended over 30 years ago, the social and economic legacies of apartheid continue today. South Africa is the most unequal country in the entire world, according to the World Bank, with white South Africans earning over 12 times what black South Africans do. But don't worry, we're going to make sure that the white Afrikaners who instituted generations of discrimination and segregation against black people get everything they need to get started here in the United States in their new life.
White people in South Africa, Afrikaners, are claiming racial discrimination, and because of this, the Trump administration is granting them refugee status here in the United States. Now, never mind that claims of discrimination doesn't meet the threshold for refugee status under domestic and international refugee law. And never mind that Trump suspended the refugee resettlement program after he got elected into office, because these white Afrikaners get an exception. Don't worry about the millions of refugees in Sudan and Libya and the Congo who are facing historic levels of hunger and violence in their countries. Let's focus on these white people who feel like they're being discriminated against. And let's fast track their process, something that usually takes 1 to 2 years. Let's not make these white South Afrikaners wait more than 3 months. This is just one of the many reasons why that woke family member at the dinner table thinks that you're a racist bigot for supporting Trump.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about the clips we just played you, right? Okay, I don't know how many of you know about how white South Africans earned the status of being refugees. And I do believe that when you talk about refugees, you're talking about people who have really endured harsh conditions to a point where they have to escape their country to go and seek refuge in a different country, you know.
Most especially because they're seeking safety.
Right.
And these said people, if you tell me there are Sudanese people who are trying to seek refugee status, I would understand. If you tell me it's some people in although Somali right now we've not had
stable,
cases. Somali looks to be stable. If you tell me these people are coming from Congo, I would really understand what you're trying to say.
From Palestine,
yes,
you
and
would understand.
also from Yemen, from some parts of Yemen, I would understand. But if you tell me that these refugees are coming from South Africa, we are Africans in Africa, right? We should have been the first ones to hear that there are endangerment of species in South Africa,
right?
You know, even South Africans themselves would have come to TikTok and said, you know what, how South African whites are being treated is a very huge pandemic, and they need help immediately. Because you remember when it was xenophobia was allegedly being conducted in South Africa, the media could not shut up about it. Everybody in Africa and beyond knew that South Africans were very xenophobic, and most of them were harming other Africans who are migrating to South Africa.
That was the idea that was being pushed. Yeah?
But
so
right now,
why didn't we see whatever this thing that happened to white South Africans that made them earn their refugee status, you know?
Right, because right now they're saying that white farmers in South Africa were being attacked and their lands being taken. And most South Africans you've heard speak about this issue, they're saying it is not only white South Africans who have been targeted by these specific crimes. Even black South African farmers have fallen victim to being attacked because of whatever they own in the land, you know. People want their properties, you know. And so why are the black South Africans not being given refugee status so that they can join their compadres in America?
Valid question. And if you're talking about this being a race issue, and that is why white South Africans are no longer safe in South Africa, and we talk about these cases that have been popping up of, you hear a white farmer in South Africa unaliving a child because of a mere orange a child went to pluck from his tree. So therefore they unalive that child. Can we talk about the case where that white South African man and his employees were arrested because they fed was it 2 women to the pigs after
they
unaliving them?
Those 2 women and fed them to their pigs.
Right. And then I'm gonna ask a question. After those 2 examples, and that is not the only thing that happens in South Africa by these people, after that, who needs protection and who needs to earn the refugee status? But I'm not complaining, guys. Hear me loudly. For South Africans, I feel like this is a good
big
thing.
relief. If should they all be cleared, should all of them be cleared out of South Africa and taken to America, it will be good riddance for South Africa. But it will be a bad news for black Americans because not only do they have to deal with racism from European Americans, now they'll have to deal with racism from Dutch South African Americans. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right, but I feel like these Afrikaners, I feel like they don't know what they're dealing with, because I think they're all in that hype of migrating from South Africa, which they believe to be bad, going to America, but I don't feel like they get the full scope of what they're going to be experiencing there, because black Americans are very different from South Africans, and that is their land, you know.
Right, and you know, funny enough, when you mentioned that, I just remembered something I once saw on TikTok, and it was a black American woman who was saying that European Americans, what they hate most, more than black Americans, is immigrants, especially immigrants that look like them. So they'll experience xenophobia from white America because white America does not like competition.
And another question I was just thinking about while I was watching these clips, guys, I was thinking about the fact that right now it's looking like, okay, I'm asking this, do you think they have something planned for South Africa? Because tell me why it's looking like they're trying to save the white race from South Africa, so that what can happen, because they're okay.
That is just a conspiracy thought.
It's not don't mention that here. That is just my own thoughts.
It's just a wild thought.
It's just a wild thought that I had, a bad thought I had to share with you guys. Yeah, I hope there's nothing they're preparing for South Africa, because we are not even done with Burkina Faso, and now something looks like it's, you know, it's cooking for South Africa, you know.
But you know, I do love how South Africans have taken this news, especially the black South Africans, because they're pleading with their government that for those who have accepted to go to America, the government government
their
should
citizenship.
leave them to go, and the government should demand for them to the government should revoke their citizenship so that they can, because you can't claim that you don't have
You're being
safety in your own
mistreated.
home. You leave that home and then you want again to come back to the very place you claim is unsafe for you. That is
doesn't
not
make
what
sense.
refugees usually do for the most part anyway.
Right. And let's just talk about how President Trump was big on talking about refugees and how they needed to be, not refugees, but immigrants, and how they needed to be sent back to their country because it was having a negative economic impact on Americans.
And furthermore, he claimed that Americans, the immigrants were taking American jobs, and right now he's importing farmers from South Africa, and yet they still have farmers in Nebraska who are crying that the government is taking away their subsidies, the government is doing this and that to them. So these white South African farmers, they've gone to take the jobs of the white American farmers. American farmers in general.
Where do you bring in the balance? Because also he talked about national, other than economic impact, he also talked about national security.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, you gave all these reasons, and then here you are prioritizing and giving refugee status to South Africans to a point where white South Africans, you're chartering a plane to bring them into America. And they can't help but think about the situation that happened in Argentina, guys. How they imported white people into Argentina in order to wash away the black community in Argentina, which they did successfully. Right now, that's a very small, like literally, you barely, like a black person in Argentina, it's like a miracle for you to spot one, So I'm asking myself, is it that they're trying to do something like that, importing a lot of white people, and so Afrikaners are an easier
way to bring, because now
and
a lot of other people do not want to go to America to stay there, but if you entice Afrikaners with this, that and the other, it will be easier for you to import other white people into the nation, because guys, also remember that the birth rate is declining, and more so from the white population than the black population. So if you bring in white South Africans, they're still giving birth, maybe compared to white Americans.
Europeans.
People who usually do this data, they have maybe they have even
an insight,
foreshadowed the future, and they see if our own women and men are not eager to give birth, since South Africans are from Africa, the white ones, they will multiply our white people for us. Because why would you bring in the white ones and not bring in the colored ones from Venezuela and all that? And then furthermore, you cite security issues because you don't want to bring in the Venezuelans, Cubans, and the rest, yet you bring in South Africans. So my main question is also, as you bring in the white South Africans, do they align with your national security integrity?
Good question.
And if they do align with your national security integrity and the vision you have for national security,
do they also align with your economic goals?
Yeah, and in the same aspect, as a government, you hear that a specific group is very racist, preferably or supposedly even more racist than other groups of white people. Why would you import them into your country to bring
Knowing
that kind of venom?
Issue.
Yeah, to bring that kind of venom, and you already know that your own white population, not all of it, but a percentage of it, already holds negative views when it comes to different skin colors. So you bring these other ones to even contaminate them even more.
Yeah, but guys, this is where you say, let the chips fall wherever they may, because I feel like at the end of the day, they're going to meet their match, whatever that means.
Africans.
But yeah, they're going to meet their match, because you can't go into America. These are different society, different setup. Like literally, you guys have different traditions. You can't go behaving. Yeah, you can't get away with it, but behaving the way you do in South Africa, in America might not fly even with your own people. Because let me tell you something, I feel like, I don't know if you've ever watched a video where you see how white South Africans are treated in other parts of the world.
Yeah,
and they're normally not treated well.
Yeah,
they're normally not treated well. And if you look at one thing that, okay, I'm just gonna say this and please forgive me, yeah, because it's something that everybody does, but I feel like Americans, you really don't get away with an accent, especially a funny one. in America, you know, people are gonna be laughing at you. They're gonna be calling you out on it, you know.
Which is still wrong also.
Yeah, but they're gonna be made fun of, especially with their own people who, okay, you're white, that is true, but you're not like them.
Especially,
you know?
I do feel like because the American society really looks down on Africa, so anything associated with Africa also automatically
becomes the
bottom of the barrel. So you can be an immigrant from Netherlands, and yeah, you have an immigrant from South Africa, and you're both white. The Netherlands immigrant, I think, will have even more privileges than the white South African. And guys, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we once saw a documentary where white South Africans had migrated to other parts of the world, and they weren't particularly having it easy because of their accent and what
their
made,
origin also.
Yes, what poured salt into that injury was that they were from Africa. Like, how can you? Okay, how they were treated, according to that documentary, is that how could you be white and claim to come from Africa? How does the math? You get?
Yeah. Anyway, guys, let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. We'd really love to hear your thoughts and opinion. And as usual, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Let's catch you on the next. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Yeah. We'll catch you on our next episode.